Is ADHD something that only affects boys and men? Not really. In order to get better perspective on that, and also some better understandings about folks that get diagnosed in one country, end up living in another, the challenges around getting adequate treatment, challenges around explaining things in a different language, something that I've experienced living in Spain, it's important to look at these aspects. In order to do so, in this episode of ADHme, ADHwe, we're talking to Renata, who's an amazing person, very creative, and has an incredible story. Let's go check it out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of ADHme, ADHwe. Very excited to have our guest with us today. It's very important to think about how ADHD manifests itself in different ways in different people, and also the ways in which it's dealt with depending on the country of origin of the person or where they might be living in the world. The stigmas that are associated with it, how it's accepted or not by different societies, depending on if someone's diagnosed as a child or as an adult. My case, being an American living in Spain, I have some things in my own experience that have been unique to that. We're not here to talk about me. We are here to interview and hear from Renata, who's a wonderful person from Brazil, living in Germany. But Renata, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Just living my best neurodivergent life. Living la vida loser.
And I wouldn't go that far. But anyway, very nice to have you with us. And to get started, for folks that don't know you, can you just give us a little bit about your background and when ADHD started to become a part of it?
So actually, since quite early, because I was, quite different since the beginning of my life. The ways that I used to react and how I used to just be. I was I had a lot of trouble fitting socially, and I used to talk a whole lot, like a lot. And yeah, it just drive people crazy because it was kind of like, this anxious kid that wanted to know it all and was curious about everything, but couldn't really focus on anything, and but had like constantly like this amount of energy that it's above and beyond. And I was very prone to accidents as well. So at some point it was like, okay, we have to check. I think it was also agree with school, because although I had really good grades, behavior was not very good, like I would finish everything very quickly and then like just disturb the entire class. And so for that reason, it was decided that I should check it out and see what it was. And then in the beginning, it was a couple of things that were considered, and at the time they said to me like, yeah, no, you're not autistic, because autistic is only for like little boys, and also is something that comes with communication. So if you if you were autistic, you wouldn't talk that much. And I was like, okay, so what is it then? And then the first ADHD diagnosis came, and with that, medication and therapy. And yeah, and so it was kind of like a whole life kind of feeling like somehow in and out at the same time, like I'm inside the group, but at the same time, I'm not part of it. And I don't perceive things in the same way. And I'm very aware of it. And that becomes a point that it's like, even I'm super aware of it. So it brings a lot of things like anxiety of saying the wrong things, or the, wish that people would really, really include me in things, and to be very disappointed when they are not. And blaming myself for being different, and many other things.
Yeah.
And then moving from South Brazil to São Paulo, where I was where I went to college, and when I was living in Brazil before I came to Germany. I need to do again another diagnose, because at that point then I changed doctors, and somehow the doctor didn't believe that I had ADHD, because he was like, okay, you don't look like you have ADHD, and you're a woman, and very well accomplished young woman. You went to school and you had like super good grades and blah blah blah. So I don't really believe, maybe it was like a mistake. It was common in the 90s and the 80s that they were just like giving diagnosis of ADHD. So maybe we should review that. So I went to the process of diagnosing again, and it was again ADHD. I continued there the treatment, and at that time I was because I was first um, prescribed Adderall, which work um, quite well for me, although it was still a little bit like, I feel like it was still a little bit. It wouldn't help much with all the other the side effects of ADHD. And after 3 different medications, I realized there's no actual medication that helps with the other sides of ADHD besides the executive function, right?
Yeah.
But at that point, I thought like, yeah, maybe I should give another medication a try. So at that point, I chose to go for Ritalin, which was really not for me. I was taking for a little while, but besides having to take it more often, it felt like it wasn't. I was really still not very concentrated on things. Still had a lot of difficulty. Although at one point I was taking like maximum dose of what was permitted, it was still not working quite well for me. And then I moved to Germany. And in Germany, at first, I was going back to Brazil and picking up the prescription always in Brazil. And then I got pregnant and had my first kid. So during the time that you're pregnant or you're breastfeeding, you cannot have the medication for ADHD because it's amphetamine. So you probably shouldn't. So I was I was not taking any medication, and then after I stopped breastfeeding, then I got pregnant with my second kid, and then breastfeeding again, and then COVID came, and it was like, oh my god, now I cannot get medication, I cannot get back to Brazil. So what am I going to do? I started panicking because it was a point where I started to get really, really deep into depression and and the effects of ADHD started really weight on me because it kind of like hit that at this point I don't only have to be responsible for myself, but I also have to be responsible for 2 children. And I cannot be distracted if I'm in a park and they fall and I'm not paying attention to them. Something horrible might happen. That started giving me major anxiety, start having panic
Hey.
attacks, and start getting like really in a really bad situation, to a point where I was not leaving the house anymore. And when I would really have like really bad panic attacks. So um my husband was like, hey, maybe you should search for a doctor here, which is not easy. First, because Germany, although it's a very good public health system, to get anything that it's related to mental health or neurodivergency, appointments in English even, because although I speak German in a colloquial way, I wouldn't feel comfortable describing this kind of symptoms and talking about diagnosis or medication fully in German, right? So
Yeah.
I needed somebody that would speak English with me, and that was really hard to find. So I decided to just go, because they have kind of like this ERs um, for the psychiatric
Yep.
emergencies. And since I was having these panic attacks, I went there, and it was kind of like the it was a really weird experience, because it was met with a lot of um I don't even know which word to use, because it was basically like I came in and I was clearly in distress. I told everything that I could, and she basically looked at me. She didn't even flinch, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of tired of people coming here thinking that I'm I'm a pill machine and I'm not gonna give you amphetamines. This is a drug. You have to have a diagnosis. And I was like, yeah, I had two, but now I don't have a doctor here anymore, and I don't have access to my diagnosis in Brazil. So, I need to have a diagnosis. She was like, yeah, I feel like you're just searching for drugs, basically. And it seems to me that you are more on the bipolar side of things. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, with that, let's just stop for a minute, because there are a couple of things to unpack here. Starting, I think a couple of things that I'm hearing is one, and you're the first person that I'm interviewing, speaking from the experience of a woman, because a lot of times there's this mischaracterization that, oh, ADHD is just something that's in young boys who are very active and have lots of energy, and we all know that's simply not the case. The different things that can come into that as well, in terms of stigma, in terms of getting the right treatment or recognition. Another thing that you talked about as well, that once again, it's different for everybody. And so that's what's interesting about these conversations, is seeing how it works in different countries, in this case, different genders. But in the sense of growing up and doing really well in school, but then having behavioral, issues, is something that I can identify with, because school for me was relatively easy, and I could always do things pretty quickly. And I learned that I didn't have to make a huge effort in order to do reasonably well. At the same time, you're being fed this information that you're a successful student, but then simultaneously, in my case, there can be self-esteem things that are going on there where you don't really feel that you're as great as you might be told by others. And it's hard for people to understand. It's like, oh, but this is going well, you do this well, and you do this well, and you do this well. Like, yeah, but I don't feel like I'm doing things as I would like to be able to, and I can't concentrate, I have other challenges here and there. And so that's something that I've noticed. And then another thing too, like you said, the desire to fit in. And whether you're a child or an adult, the sense of belonging and Maslow's hierarchy of needs and wanting to feel accepted by a group. And also that then can play into two different things, and probably more. One is masking. So for folks that don't know what that is, it's not that you're acting, in a Hollywood sort of way. It could, maybe in some cases it goes that far, but that you're telling yourself, like, what is it that everybody else is doing, or that I'm kind of expected to do in this situation? And so if it's that I change subjects too quickly so people don't get that, I literally talk too fast, or I am connecting things that that don't seem connected, that people aren't going to get it, or that I'm going to stand out. And so I just want to have normal conversations and kind of go with the flow in that regard. I think that's something that a lot of other folks can identify with. And then in addition is the people pleasing aspect, is that it doesn't matter if I'm okay. What matters is that everybody else is, and that way I'll be okay. In a short-term sense, in going along with the masking, I think yes, but you don't really feel like you get to totally be yourself. And for people that don't know that, and plenty of people that don't have ADHD probably know that, because of different reasons and different aspects of socialization. But those are, some of the things that you've talked about there, I think are very valuable for a lot of people. Like I always say, each case is different, but these are things that, in my case, because of being diagnosed just a year ago, realizing, I'm 37 years old, so over, a quarter of a century, closer to, almost half a century now of life, and realizing, oh, like these moments and these things and those tendencies and that kind of stuff. And it can happen in an academic setting, it can happen with friends, it can happen with family, it can happen at work. And just being aware that, I think, is important. Regarding the challenges around medication that you've explained, I think, I don't know, I haven't heard anyone who's ever said, like, everything was perfect on the first try. It generally seems like there's going to be a process of trial and error.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think, it's just important for people to realize, like, it's just part of the process. It's hard. Like, it can be very frustrating, but you've got to keep trying. And so don't, invest everything all in the first try. Like, I have, my next conversation will be in a couple of weeks with a doctor from the public health system here, so that I don't have to pay out of pocket, like, for my medication. And so, like I said, everyone's in a different phase or another. And so I think your experience there is very valuable. In terms of, well, just to touch on a couple other things though, is that you've talked about, different areas where you've had some difficulties, but I'd like to know more about what are some of the things that you do really well? Because I know some, but I want to know from you, what are the things that you're excited about sharing there?
I don't know. I feel, I feel like
Well, don't worry, I put the answers in the chat. So, just the first one.
well, I feel like there was I got really into TikTok like I don't know 99% of a world population because that has a mobile phone. And there's this creator Elise Myers, and I really like her. She's also neurodivergent, and she really explained what I think I have, and I'm pretty positive that this comes with ADHD. That is this, how is she calls how hard can it be? Because I have this thing as well, like everything I see, anything, I think I can do it. Really, anything. And I kind of can if I try, at least half decent. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I can do it. And I think this is a really great thing to have. Maybe it's a little bit delusional.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
But I used to say a couple of years ago, I used to say, because of also a little bit of like imposter syndrome, I used to say that I want to do at least I want to do everything at least in a mediocre level, and then I will jump to the next thing. And this is basically what it is. I try everything, and I learn things very fast, and this is a really good thing. It's a really positive aspect in my experience, right? Because whatever I say, like, hey, I'm going to learn this, I will learn this, and this is something that I think is quite at least I perceive this to be something that it's very similar in other people that have ADHD as well, right? And for me, it was like with learning how to draw or how to play violin or how to dance ballet and belly dancing and Muay Thai and and this and that and this and that um and although it can be at some point a little bit overwhelming because sometimes people come like, how did you do all of this, and you're not like 100 years. I'm like, I don't know, I like doing many things.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting point that once again I can relate to because of music and sports and things like that and trying lots of different things, and but never, I mean with maybe a couple of exceptions, but trying lots of things but never really getting to the point of I would say complete dominance or mastery. Or like I see other people that do those things because they only focus on one or two, whereas for me it's like, no, but I want to do 17. And I'll do this for a bit and then I'll move on to the next thing. And part of being impulsive and enjoying, I think part of it as well, at least in my case, is the rush and excitement of learning something new.
Something new.
But then it gets boring. Or not that it gets boring, but like that it just like, well, I don't know if there's something else. It's not that I don't like this, but I always see that there's something different that I can do.
Exactly.
And that's a challenge.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a challenge, but it's also, I feel like, a really great thing because then this puts you through, going to other different things, and I think it made me very adaptive as well because, that led me to live in several different places and having to learn things on my own most of the times. Yep. And this is also very helpful if you want to, do something crazy like move to a completely different country that where you don't speak the language and you don't really know the way that people live, and then you're suddenly decides to start a new life for yourself. And if you do not have like this lack of fear that comes with, with moving, then you can just, do whatever you want. And I think this is something that wanting to learn everything at least a little bit, it's it doesn't work either, you know?
I think that's a great point. And it's almost like craving those new experiences and being excited about doing new things gives a lot of resilience and ability to adapt. And with that in mind, I want to, we kind of stopped it at one point, but I want to pick back up. Well, in terms of what you've done professionally, talk about that. What have you done as a working professional? You can talk about, the relationship with ADHD or not, but like, tell me more about like, what is it that Renata does?
So I work as a digital marketing manager for a cloud company, platform, Kubernetes, everything. They do everything. It's a wonderful company. They're really cool here in Germany. It's called ADHme, and I work for them. I do digital marketing, and I also do part of events and community as well. So I take care of this event that they do with other two companies, which is called Cloud Natives or Meetup, and basically I help organizing this event, right? And yeah, a little bit of everything in this area as well. But that was really not the beginning of my. Actually, it was never my intent path, to be honest. And I think most of my life was also uh, because of because of ADHD was always bringing to like different places where I never thought I would be from the beginning, right? So I started when I was in school. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to med school, and I actually went to med school, and I saw it was not for me at all, and then I gave up. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? I'm going to, try history because I really interested for history, and still is something that I plan to one day if I win in the lottery study history and philosophy as well. But anyway, another thing. So, so I thought I study history, but it was kind of like, so in Brazil, you can study something like history and it be directed to research or to teaching. And I was doing a course that was kind of like for both. But for some reason, like all the teachers kind of like were already more in connection with people that were already in teaching. And that was not my background at all. And I was quite young as well. So I felt a little bit like, yeah, this isn't maybe not micro and maybe not what I wanted to do. But then I noticed that I wanted something that was more academic, actually.
Right.
And then at that point, I was kind of like drawn to a drawing phase. And my mom was like, yeah, why don't you try like study fashion history? And I was like, oh, okay, I go do that. And then I did a course was like fashion history and then fashion business, and was like, okay, I like this. So I moved to São Paulo, went to university there, study fashion business, and then got into a master program to do fashion marketing. At that time, first I started working with like research inside the university, and I started doing like this internship in a research incubator for consumer behavior, and I thought like this is what I want to do. But then I started working for a textile company, and then I discovered marketing. I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And then I changed to that, and then I came to Germany, and I was like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna, you know, work here in this and work for a couple of fashion companies. And then I met like this people from this agency that did they work with how is it called? It's jingles, not jingles. It's like the soundtrack. They make soundtrack for advertising.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then they were like, yeah, maybe you can come work for us and can do because we have interested to go to Brazil and start from that expansion to South America. And was like, yeah, cool, can do that. And then I went to music and marketing, and COVID came, and then I went to marketing and tech, and now here I am, and I somehow felt really in love with the cloud community, cloud native community, especially Kubernetes,
Yep.
and yeah, and now I'm
That's
like
it.
here.
Yeah. But I think, all of us have different stories. And what my psychologist once said was, Bart, you won't have the most linear way of getting to the destination, but you find a way to get there. And that's definitely been true for me. And I think that it's totally fine that you start, and the things that you've learned in the fashion industry, of course, are applicable in different ways to the tech, like the cloud native area. So I think there's absolutely no problem with that. With that in mind, and also you said too, the ability to be working with different things in your job. That's something that I like a lot as well. Is that it's multifaceted, and once again, that I'm not expected to be. I mean, I do try to. I specialize in certain areas, but it's also like, if necessary, I can also do this or do that, and because of having experience in different areas. So I think that's also helpful. In terms of resources that have been helpful for you related to ADHD, there are a lot of resources out there, but are there any in particular that have been beneficial?
I I feel like in general, I mean, really I have a really big difficulty nowadays on reading books. This is a thing that it started really late in my life, to be honest, because when I was a kid, I had, crazy hyper focus on anything I was reading, and I would, like, I couldn't sleep at night if I started a book. And then, if I started a book in the afternoon and by 10 I hadn't finished, I had to, go through the night until the morning and until I finished that freaking book, right? And that's kind of fade away somehow. And I think also, with live kids and so
Yeah.
many other projects became really hard. So actually to find community was a way that kind of helped me a lot with that. And there's a lot of TED Talks and a lot of, interviews with doctors and specialists in ADHD on YouTube, for instance, which were really, really great for me as help to, understand a little bit of myself and just kind of like exchanging conversation. And I think this was also it was also very good for me because it was a way that I could, from the beginning start and saying like, hey, I have ADHD. I kind of like, am I wrong here? Am my ADHD DAR a little bit off? But maybe are you too? Yes, I am, or I am not. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm not going
Yeah.
to bring this up. Although most of the people that I say like, hey, are you? And they say no. A couple of months later, they're going like, yeah, you just got my diagnosis.
Yeah.
So to just
That's interesting. That's actually enough for an entire episode, is like those conversations, because the more and more open I am about it, and it's not that I like force it on people, but like it's just, sort of a disclaimer so that people understand better who I am and how I am and why I do things the way I do them. And that's interesting. It's not that you want to force someone in an awkward situation, but
no,
it's like, well, if you're, and regardless, wherever you're at with it, like, I'm happy to talk about my experience, because if it makes this much difference for somebody else, it's totally worth it.
yeah, exactly. And it's also a little bit about, about like the I. So a couple of months ago, I started kind of like documenting a little bit of my process of diagnose and also like how I was doing with medication on TikTok. And from there, I got like some people that kind of like reach out, and I had, well, because of ADHD, I kind of like didn't didn't continue much from that. But then afterwards, I went back again, and I did a couple of videos, and there's one specifically that I was talking about ADHD and hygiene, and how sometimes I'm just like disgusting pig, and I was talking about this, and I was like, hey, and it's completely okay for anybody to look at me and don't identify at all and just think like, yeah, okay, you're just like disgusting and lazy, and it's fine, it's your opinion. But in the end, the reason why I put this out there is not for people to like me or to agree with me. It's just to, find one person that will see this and will think like, hey, I know, right? I feel that way too. And we'll start a conversation about it, because we do this to, not feel alone on this. Again,
That did.
this kind of like belonging and
No, absolutely. And to not feel alone and to make sure that others don't feel alone either. I mean, that was the whole point. Like, why I got inspired to realize, like, okay, there are plenty of people who are interested in talking about this because of the panel that we did at KubeCon with Farah, with Rich, and with Hiva. And unfortunately, Waleed couldn't be there because it was actually his idea originally. Is that once you open up the conversation, people, it's like what they say, like, if you build it, they will come. And it's because some people don't want to talk about this in public. And I completely understand why. There are very good reasons to not be comfortable about that. And so I just want people to know that they have a space where they can do that. And even just listening is fine. And what we're all saying is, like, if it makes this much of a difference, I think that's what really matters. Well, Renata, with that, we do have to finish. I'm sure we can spend 3 hours and I will have to have you on another episode. No, it's fine. But I just want to see, is there any sort of final thoughts that you'd like to leave folks with? You've talked about a lot of different things, but if there's one, key message that you would like to share, I'm sure you'll have 15, but just try to choose one, because I would have 55 or whatever. But what would you like to, what's your main message?
I feel like, from everything and from the beginning, from the moment that I got my diagnosis, there was always like this fear of what people would think, and that came in for a long time, made me kind of like hide who I was and be weird about who I was because of that. So today I just feel like the best thing I can say is like, be confident in who you are. Even if people say to you like, hey, this is not what you have, if you think this is what you have, or if you think there is something with you that it's not fitting the mold that it's put it out there for what normal is, or what typical is, go ahead, even if it's not ADHD, it could be something, right? So just go ahead with your guts. Don't worry about judgment of other people. And once you get your diagnosis, try to find community, right? Because it's easier to have the sense of community and to not feel alone if you find people that are like you, than to try to mold yourself into a pre-existing kind of puzzle that you are not really a part of. And it's okay to also be a part of different groups, obviously. I mean, I have plenty of friends that don't have ADHD, right? But most of the people I know don't have ADHD. But what I mean is that finding yourself in a community of people that are like you and share the same experiences and share similar views in similar ways, something that really helps you when things get hard, and they get hard.
Yep. But like you said, I think just as we talk a lot about with tech, make community part of the solution. This is exactly the same. I always tell folks, do not suffer in silence. It may take a little bit of time to find the right place, but they're the right, community or group. But if you only look at this as I'm going to get a therapist, I'm going to take medication, that's fine. That's good. But I would definitely encourage people, and you can be a lurker, an observer, whatever, but at least give it a chance, because it's helped me a lot, and I really thank you for that insight. That being said, Renata, thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to future conversations. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers.